Hi guys, so I am actually going to do this video because I did not think it was going to become such a big topic, but I posted, it was some blurb about co-sleeping the other day, and it wasn't one that I wrote, it was one that I had seen pop up and I just reshared it. And it was like how, your child's, co-sleeping is, your child comes into your bed and it's like a monster, trying to find the, oh, you're okay? Flying around or something. I don't even remember what the quote was, but it was so funny. And I just said afterwards, how it was, that's kind of our life right now, because Mia has been having a really hard time since she had the flu, because during the flu, the coughing fit she was getting so bad, she ended up sleeping in our bed like every night. Now, mind you, excuse me, burping. I have co-slept with all three of my children, not like exclusively and not for the whole time. They always start off in their own bed, and then if in the middle of the night they need mommy cuddles, by all means. And like when Mia was little, because she was the only one that really nursed longer, I nursed her in bed. Like it was comfortable. Both of us, we'd fall asleep. It's perfectly fine. No worries at all. Like I said, I've done it for all three kids. The way I worded it was that, I'm not fighting her still coming into our bed, even though she's not sick anymore. Granted, this was night 3 in a row that she has not come in our bed. I don't know if it's going to keep up, but anyways. I put in there that, I'm really not fighting it right now because, one, I fought it with the boys really bad. I was insistent that they had to go back into their bed. This was also while we were all room sharing. Now, if you don't know what room sharing is when your kids are in the same room as you. Before we moved down to South Carolina, when we were in Massachusetts, our living situation was just the place that we had found. We had to move out quickly. It was a big whole ordeal, but the place we found, it was a 2-bedroom. My mother was also living with us. Again, it's a whole different story. But the room that we had, Ed, myself, and Jeffrey at the time, I was pregnant with Robert, it was huge. When we moved, I'm going to tell you how much furniture was in there when we moved. We had our queen bed. We had 2 toddler beds, 3 bureaus. Yep, it was 3 bureaus. And there was so much floor space. Like, this room was huge. Plus, there was 2 huge walk-in closets. Like, this room was massive. So for all of us to be in there was perfectly fine. It was temporary. We knew we were going to move down here. Moving into a bigger place just seemed, because one did open up in the complex we were at. It was like we were going to move and then move again in a year, because we knew we were going to come down here. I'm like, what, for a year? Like, for us, it didn't seem worth it. So we stayed and we all were in one room. Now, mind you, I fought the kids really hard to be in their own beds because I really thought that's what they needed. No, they really needed to sleep with me. And then what ended up happening is that they didn't sleep well. Mama didn't sleep well. So then we were all crabby pantses. So when we came down to South Carolina, the boys ended up having their own room. Well, they roomed together. And wouldn't you know, they sleep fine. Occasionally, Robert would come back into our bed. Granted, he was little, but he's 5 now, and very, very rarely does he come in our bed. Like, I would say once every 6 months he might end up in our bed, and it's usually he's had a bad dream and it's like 3 a.m, he comes in our bed and he lays down. But that is very few and far between. So I know that it, just because she wants to come in our bed now, it will change. And like I said, we're room sharing, so I'm not fighting it at this point. And my husband agrees with me, because that's what we were doing with the boys, and it just did not work. Looking back, I think if we had just let them sleep in our bed, we probably all would have been sleeping much, much better. But, I can't go back and change time. So I am letting Mia come into our bed. Now, the whole moral of this is, I know I just ranted on about all this, but on this post, I ended up getting so many DMs on Instagram about how co-sleeping is bad and it's gonna hurt her and she's not going to sleep on her own anymore. And I was like so many, it was actually obnoxious. And I don't even know where it came from, because I didn't say anything bad. It's not, it's like she's ending up in our bed, which is fine. And like I said, we were perfectly fine with it. She's fine with it. She goes right back to sleep after getting into our bed. And I was just really confused, because they're all saying all these negative things, but yet I was having people comment and say positive things, and like, oh, my kid does that too. And it is what it is. We all know that our kids will eventually, I know that she's going to eventually sleep in her own bed. she does sleep in her own bed. Like I said, she starts off every night. She falls asleep in her own bed. She does not fall asleep in our bed. That never happens. I think if anything, it happened when she was an infant, and it was because we were just having a really tough time. But like I said, she sleeps in her own bed. Now, with that being said, when we move, which will be within the next 6 months, we will be moving into either a different place where we live now or another location. We're not sure yet. Mia will have her own room. And so when that happens, obviously, then it will be the time when I'm like, okay, no more sleeping in mommy and daddy's bed. You need to go sleep in your own bed. And I'm sure she'll be fine, because the boys were the same way. They wanted to be in our bed, and then once they had their own room, they were fine. I think it's just knowing that mommy and daddy are right there, so why can't I go into their bed? Like, they're right there. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like I said, I have so many friends and people I follow that this happens to them too. Like, it is what it is. I think it's just, we've come into an age that we either are so overprotective about co-sleeping and how it's harmful for babies, and I do agree that it is harmful for babies, and you do have to be extremely careful. And I am not I'm not a heavy sleeper. And my husband also worked overnights at the time, so when she did co-sleep with us in the middle of the night when she was an infant, it was just me and her in the bed. So, there was never any of the hazards. I always, I'm extremely cautious because sorry, alarm's going off. So I understand, like, I get it, but she is 18 months old now. She is extremely capable of getting herself out of a blanket if she needed to. Now that she does, she can, even regulations is they can have their own blanket now. So I don't really feel the concern at this point to be cautious as much with her. She is perfectly fine. She sleeps fine. It's just, she's having a hard time. And like I said, we did do 3 nights in a row. She stayed in her bed all night long. Yes, I'm talking about you, little miss. And honestly, I'm just not concerned. I just thought it was kind of strange that I was getting so many negative messages when this is extremely common. I know so many people who co-sleep, or their kids start off in their own bed and then end up in the parents' bed. It is what it is. I know she's not going to be doing this forever. I know it is just a phase right now, and it's tough, but also 18 months old is pretty tough, and it's exhausting. And honestly, I would rather her sleep next to me. If she needs to know that mommy is right there, then so be it. Because guess what? My sleep is more important right now with 3 kids than getting her to sleep back in her bed, because I've tried that. I was doing that for a while and making her stay in her own bed, and neither one of us were sleeping, and we'd be up for hours, and then it was just miserable. So why not just let her sleep in our bed? She cuddles and falls back asleep. So that's how I feel. I don't feel like I feel like it's a whole mom shaming all over again. It's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. All I was doing was sharing this because I was so frustrated at the time, because that's how I felt. Like, that is co-sleeping. You're getting meat in the back, you're getting a hand in the face, fingers up the nose. Like, it is what it is. But at the same time, like, I know that there's going to be a time where she's never going to want to do this again. And I will miss this because she is our last child. So I'm just kind of frustrated, but enjoying the moments, because I know there'll be a time when she doesn't sleep in our bed anymore. Jeffrey never comes in our bed anymore. I honestly can't remember the last time he came in our bed. It probably was before I got pregnant with Mia. So we're looking at a good 2 years at this point. So over 2 years, and he hasn't come back in our bed. So I know that it's a phase, and there's no harm. She's perfectly fine. I really think we need to just stop shaming moms. And like, I don't even know these people who sent me messages. That was the worst part. It's like, you don't know me. You saw one post and like went off. Like, why? Everything is fine. She's perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine. Like, honestly, I probably had more anxiety trying to force her to stay in her own bed than I do now. So why make myself more anxious and give myself some depression, which I'm already prone to anyways, all because there's some norm that she has to sleep in her own bed and never come into my bed, and it's just not worth it. It's really, really not. If it's going to comfort her and help her get back to sleep, then I do it. And sometimes I'll let her fall back asleep, and like if it's really like uncomfortable for me, because sometimes, you know, she might just be really up my back, or I'm just having a hard time sleeping with her there, I'll put her back in her bed when she's asleep, and when she knows, she'll sleep again. But you know, sometimes it's just not worth me getting up and putting her back in her bed. It's not worth it. So I guess the moral of my story is, do what works for you. If your kid needs to sleep in your bed, then let them sleep in your bed. If you're doing it safely, then who cares? And it doesn't matter. And we need to stop mom shaming, because for the love of God, we are all trying to survive in a world where social media makes everything look perfect. And if you do something slightly wrong, the whole world is going to come after you. And there's no reason why. Like, nobody had these mom shames years ago. There wasn't as much postpartum depression. And if there was, nobody talked about it. And now it's like the slightest mood, like I felt it coming out in me because I saw all these messages. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, it's not like she's my, like, God forbid she had been my first child, I probably would have been traumatized. And like reading all these messages, and like I actually just wrote back and was pretty nasty to everybody. And I'm like, this is just not right. We should not be mom shaming, making people feel bad for the decision that works well for their family. Like, whether it was, I got some message about co-sleeping or room sharing, like, one, we kind of have to. That's our living situation right now is we don't have a room for Mia, and we're not putting her in the boys' room. There's just not enough room in there. So she's in our room, and it's perfectly fine. I did it with all 3 kids. I had Jeffrey and Robert at the same time in our room, and it was perfectly fine. I don't feel like there's anything wrong. It is what works for our family right now. So mind your own damn business and stop making people feel bad for their choices that works for their child, for them, and for their family. It is, I don't know why in 2020 we are still talking about this, because it is so horrible, and it's happening way more. Sorry, I have to move. The car light's moving. Really kind of, oh no, it's almost time. So anyways, I just really think that we just need to stop it and just encourage people. Like, I was putting it out there so that everyone knew that, like, you're not alone, because I was not the only one who's dealing with this. Some of my friends, their kids are older and they're still dealing with this. So I felt like here I am with 18-month-old who is still doing it. And then I kid you not, one of the nights she stayed in her bed all night long, I think it was the first night, Robert ended up in our bed because he had a nightmare. So I mean, and he's almost 6. So it is what it is. I feel like we just need to stop mom shaming, be supportive, and just be like, you know what, you're not alone, or that must stink, hang in there, instead of all this negative commenting that's going on, because it is so sad and depressing, and it really does hurt mom's feelings. So now that I've gone on way longer than I thought I was going to about this one, please just stop mom sharing and not mom sharing, mom shaming, and be just very supportive, because that's what we need. We do not need these negative comments, because honestly, they make it even worse.